previous installments of this Metal Gear retrospective, we have seen how Hideo Kojima went from a bottom-rung rookie to a valued employee. Just like how Solid Snake went from a rookie soldier to a battlefield legend. And just like Snake, Kojima was about to cement his legacy in the video game world. Kojima's next big game after Metal Gear 2 was a film noir sci-fi themed adventure game titled Police Knots. In Police Knots, a detective named Jonathan Ingram travels to a space station to investigate the murder of his ex-wife and the sudden disappearance of her new husband. This point-and-click adventure released to great reviews in 1994 for the NEC PC 9821, then was later ported to the 3DO in 1995. Then it was ported once again to the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn in 1996. It was around this time that Kojima began work on the next big hit game, and my favorite game in the series. My favorite game ever, actually, Metal Gear Solid. The title of Metal Gear Solid actually had three meanings, the first of course being the name of the game's hero, Solid Snake, and the second being the game's transition from 2D to 3D. But the third reason was due to a rivalry between Konami and Final Fantasy publisher Squaresoft. Konami's president wanted the new Metal Gear game to blow away the competition, so Kojima figured that if a Square couldn't be 3D or Solid, then his new game would be. Metal Gear Solid would take place in Alaska's Fox Archipelago, where an anti-terrorist turned rogue squad named Foxhound has taken over a nuclear weapons disposal facility where a new Metal Gear prototype is being developed. They demand that the government turn over the remains of Big Boss, and if their demands are not met within 24 hours, they will launch a nuclear strike on the US. Snake would be brought out of retirement for yet another mission. He would be sent into Shadow Moses Island to stop the terrorists, rescue DARPA Chief Donald Anderson and Armstack President Kenneth Baker, and neutralize the nuclear threat. In Metal Gear 2, Kojima created new gameplay elements, new characters, and an even more engaging storyline than his predecessor. And with Metal Gear Solid, Kojima wanted to do that again. But he not only made a deeper game, but he also brought new elements to the table. For the first time, Solid Snake would be given a voice. Many people auditioned for the part of Solid Snake, but the man they ultimately chose for the role of the legend was David Hayter. He has since played the voice of Snake in every Metal Gear, all up until the release of Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. Many of you might know him from some of his other work, like his voice acting role as Captain America in the 1996 Spider-Man animated series, or his role as the voice of the male playable Jedi in Star Wars The Old Republic video game. If you don't know him from his voice acting work, you may know him a little better as the screenplay writer of the live-action X-Men movie, or the co-writer of the screenplay for X2 X-Men United. He did not, however, write X-Men 3, which, in my opinion, is probably why it wasn't half as good as the first two movies in the series. David Hayter brought a gruff voice to Snake, making him sound like a war veteran that has seen his fair share of the battlefield. He also brought a great and likable personality to the character. Many action heroes are kind of one-dimensional. The typical tough guy must stop bad guys, tough guy must save world. That is tough guy's mission. However, Snake was much more believable, much more real, and much more interesting. Snake was also helped this time around by a few more radio contacts. A whole new cast of characters joined him to advise him over the codec radio. Colonel Campbell and Master McDonald Miller returned to help Snake, but they also brought along several other faces. Mei Ling, the creator of the new Soliton radar that Snake uses in Metal Gear Solid, would be a data analyst and would record Snake's mission data. In other words, she was in charge of saving the game. Also joining them was a medic by the name of Naomi Hunter, who used to be the chief of Foxhound's medical staff. Together they would help Snake finish his mission and put a stop to these next-generation Special Forces terrorists. After infiltrating Shadow Moses, Snake locates the DARPA chief Donald Anderson, who tells him about the new Metal Gear prototype being developed, Metal Gear Rex, before he succumbs to what appears to be a heart attack. This is also the first time you meet Meryl Silverberg, who you later find out is the daughter of Colonel Campbell. After the strange occurrence with the DARPA chief, you move on to fight the first of many bad guys, who were in my opinion some of the best to ever be put into a video game. The previous games had at least a few baddies that were given weak stories, or were just not that interesting to some people. But in Metal Gear Solid, every one of the characters had a deep and interesting story. Revolver Ocelot, the first boss in the game, was an older man dressed in clothes that a cowboy would wear in an old western movie, complete with spurs on his boots. His choice of weapon was another cowboy staple, a Colt single-action army revolver. He was an expert with his guns, showing off and spinning them around, doing tricks like a regular one-man gun show. In the battle with Ocelot, you have to chase him around a small room while the Armstock president, Kenneth Baker, was tied up in the middle of the room, wired to C4 explosives. At the end of the fight, you are introduced to another character, or should I say, reintroduced. A cyborg ninja equipped with stealth camouflage and a sword comes out of nowhere and slices Ocelot's arm clean off, before cutting through the C4 wires and freeing Kenneth Baker, before disappearing once again. You later fight this ninja in hand-to-hand combat and discover that he is none other than Gray Fox. After he was defeated by Snake, his body was recovered and he was brought back from the brink of death and given a new cyborg exoskeleton. He has come back once again to fight Snake. Because Snake defeated him once before, he wants Snake to finally put him out of his misery. After defeating him, he disappears once again, leaving Snake to recruit another ally, Hal Emmerich, or Otacon, the scientist responsible for the creation of Metal Gear Rex. He wanted Rex to be used to help or protect people, and not to be used for war. His family had a history of being manipulated to work on weapons, since his grandfather was involved with the Manhattan Project that created the atomic bomb. Otacon would join the Metal Gear cast and he would appear in several Metal Gear games to come. More interesting bosses followed, like Psycho Mantis, my favorite boss, and a Russian psychic who used his psychic abilities to burn down his village after he dove into the mind of his father and see nothing but hatred for himself in his father's heart. His father blamed him for his mother dying during childbirth and he hated him for it. Mantis was an angry soul. He joined Foxhound just because he wanted to kill as many people as he could, and his outside was as ugly as his inside. He was covered in horrible scars and his body had become thin and sickly looking after he used his abilities to float around for so many years. Psycho Mantis was not only an interesting boss because of his look and character, but also because of the way he broke the fourth wall in a cutscene before fighting him. The game would read your memory card and Mantis would mention other Konami games that you have played, like Castlevania. He would also comment on how many times you have saved your game in Metal Gear Solid. He would tell you to put your controller on the floor, and using the DualShock vibration built into the controller, he would use his mind to make it move. Then, while fighting him, you discover that he is very difficult, almost like he is actually reading your mind. To fix this problem, the Colonel tells you to plug the controller into port 2, thus preventing him from reading your mind. It was a unique way to break the fourth wall and add an interesting gameplay element. Next up is Sniper Wolf, a female Kurdish sniper who would sit and wait, sometimes for weeks, for a target. She was also known to fall in love with her target before she killed them. She had a deep connection to wolves, perhaps more so than people, and she was like a lone wolf herself. Otacon loved Wolf, and he's seen that she really wasn't a bad person, and he didn't want Snake to kill her. But he understood when Snake had to, and this made for a very sad cutscene. After encountering Wolf for the first time, Snake is captured and thrown into the cell with a dead DARPA chief. But something was weird. He looked like he had been dead for a long time, which couldn't have been possible, because Snake had only just seen him hours before. It is at this time that Ocelot tortures Snake with an electric table, and the player had to repeatedly tap the circle button to resist the electric torture or press select to give into it, each resulting in a separate ending to the game. There were several ways to escape from the cell after the torture. You could wait for Gray Fox to come free you by cutting the lock with his sword, or you could give Otacon a call, and he would bring you some ketchup. After the guard runs to the bathroom with a bad case of the Hershey Squirts, you could use the ketchup to make it look like Snake is dead on the floor, causing the guard to come in and check on you after he returns from the bathroom. Also, you could save the ketchup and use it as a ration for health, and you could hide under the bed when the guard goes to the bathroom, making him think that Snake had escaped. After you escape from the cell, you regain your equipment and continue with your mission. Next up was Vulcan Raven, a giant and shaman. He was over 7 feet tall, making a tight fit for him in the tank the first time you encountered him after the Revolver Ocelot battle. The next time you encounter him is in a freezer room, deep in the basement on the way to Metal Gear, and this time he is lugging around a Vulcan cannon, a Gatling gun that commonly comes equipped on an attack helicopter. Vulcan Raven was not just a big musclehead, instead he was a wise shaman, and he had both brains and brawn. And it was Vulcan Raven who finally reveals to Snake that the DARPA chief that died in front of him was not Donald Anderson, but in reality it was Decoy Octopus, a master of disguise that would go as far as cutting off his ears and replacing them with others, and siphoning the blood of those he copied into himself, thus becoming them as completely as he could. It was him that actually told Snake how to stop Metal Gear with the 3 PAL card keys. But why would he tell you how to stop Metal Gear if he was a terrorist? Snake eventually finds his way into the hangar where Metal Gear is housed and has to input the PAL keys in order to stop it. But there is a trick to the key. There is only one key, and the key changes shape after being exposed to different temperatures, which is much like another key found in Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. The first input was a room temperature key, the regular key. The next was a cold key, and Snake had to go back where he fought Vulcan Raven in the freezer until the key changed. Then he would have to go back and input that. Then the third key was a heat key, so Snake had to go all the way back to the boiler room before where he fought Vulcan Raven, only to go all the way back to the control room to input the final key. It is then that Snake discovers that Metal Gear was never active, and the terrorists needed the PAL key secret to operate Metal Gear. So Snake was being played like a pawn in a game of chess the entire time, and then another secret is revealed to him. Master Miller, who has been helping Snake the whole time, has actually been dead for several days, and the man that Snake had been talking to was actually the man in charge of Foxhound and the one behind the nuclear threat. The man with the same codename as our hero, Liquid Snake. You discover that he was actually Solid Snake's brother, but both of them were actually cloned from the legendary Big Boss, one of them getting his recessive genes, while the other gets the dominant ones. He pilots Metal Gear Rex, and the battle with Metal Gear begins. You have to shoot the radome with the Stinger missile launcher until it is destroyed, making Liquid have to open the cockpit in order to see Snake. Then you have to shoot him directly with the Stinger missiles before Metal Gear is finally put down, but Snake is blown back and knocked out from the blast of Metal Gear exploding. When Snake finally awakens, he is laying on top of Metal Gear and Liquid is standing over top of him. Snake also sees an unconscious Meryl, and Liquid then explains that Solid has a limited amount of time before a bomb kills them all, and Solid Snake has to defeat him in hand-to-hand combat before he can escape. Remember the torture sequence I mentioned that changed the ending of the game? This is where it comes into play. If you submitted to the torture, after you defeated Liquid, you would discover that Meryl is dead. Ocelot tortured her to death because you gave in, and Otacon helps you escape, and you are rewarded with Otacon's stealth camo prototype. If you endured the torture, this would unlock the true ending to the game, where Meryl is still alive and she would help Snake escape, and you would be rewarded with the bandana, which gave Snake infinite ammo. After fighting Liquid, Snake would have to escape down a tunnel on a machine gun mounted jeep, driven by Otacon or Meryl. Liquid Snake was not yet dead though, because he comes back one last time chasing behind you in another jeep. After a lot of jeep-to-jeep gunfire, Liquid swerves in front of your jeep at the end of the tunnel and you crash. Snake is then pinned under the jeep as Liquid approaches him, ready to put an end to the legend. But then suddenly, he collapses from what looks like another heart attack, just like Baker and Octopus before him. He is killed from Foxdie, a virus that kills only those with specific genetics. Snake was infected with Foxdie and was to be the carrier that would spread it to its real targets, Foxhound and everyone involved in Shadow Moses. After the credits, you hear a telephone call between Ocelot and an unknown person. They are speaking about the events on Shadow Moses, and it is soon revealed to you that there was a third clone of Big Boss that has been behind the scenes the entire time, and that he is the President of the United States. Many people again thought Kojima was crazy, this time for having such long cutscenes in the game. People had such little faith in the project that many of the voice actors actually used fake names because they didn't want to be associated with the game. But all of them were wrong. Very wrong. Metal Gear Solid was yet another smash hit. After releasing in 1998, it sold over 6 million copies worldwide. Hideo Kojima had succeeded once again where everyone had thought he would fail, but he wasn't done yet. Join me next time to see how Metal Gear went controversial.